Hey, welcome to another episode of Body Electrician Live. Tonight we're going to be talking about emotions and how they affect our health. I'm Cheryl Whitehouse in San Diego, and tonight we have my co-host, in Nancy Piscatello in New York. Hi,
Hey,
Nancy.
hi, Cheryl.
And I, we have Wil Spencer,
Hi.
and we have Dr. No in
Hi,
Texas.
Wave your puppy tail, Bob.
hi, my puppy tail. Which one?
All three.
Ooh. All right, guys. So we're going to talk about heartfelt emotions, correct? And what this can and often does to the body,
Yes.
correct?
I think so.
I think so.
The joys of emotions and the hate of emotions.
The roller coaster of emotions. Yep.
Well, for some people, I try to stay in the middle myself.
Oh, that's good. Me, I like a little roller coaster once in a while, but that's just me.
It seems that this summer, Will, you particularly took on the um, direction of looking into emotions and how they affect our health in particular, and childhood adversity, things that happen to us in childhood, they get stuck in our bodies
Yep.
as pain or disease.
Yeah, there's an author I really recommend. Right now, this is one of the current books, Trauma Proofing Your Kids. Peter Levine. He's got several books out there. Um, it's about, I've been studying about the trauma. Seems to be a reoccurring theme with people that we work with. The suppressed emotions and trauma from adversity in childhood. And there's a lot of information coming out recently that's really good that I'm finding anyhow. Listening to a book right now. Also, I read, I listen. Let's see the name. Running on Empty um, by Jonas Webb. Really good. The Emotional Absent Mother. That was part of my growing up as well as my children's growing up. I ended up marrying somebody similar to my mom that is emotionally absent, and that sets us up to be our perception of reality altered. It's not right. It causes issues, especially if you're not nurtured very well and had a lot of trauma. So it leads to our bodies holding on to the trauma in different ways. And 30, 40, 50 years later, we get sick and we don't know why. Fibromyalgia, lupus, weird pains, um, that the medical system doesn't have any real direction other than drugs. And here in the natural world, they're doing the same thing. They're just using natural things to basically numb you to try to keep you from clearing the body of the trauma and the negative emotions. I mean, I'm going through quite a few different real-time things with that right now. So my two youngest kids moved in, 13 and 15, and after 6 years of living with their alcoholic, verbally and emotionally abusive mother, it's been a challenge because they're recreating that scenario, that life, or they're trying to recreate it here because that's the program, because that's what's comfortable. And they're coming up against resistance because I'm not living that way. So there's there's a whole whirlwinds of emotions right now because we're only about 3 months into the change, and the people pleasing is ending, and the real them is starting to come out, and so now we have the true behaviors that we're dealing with, the obstinance and the non-compliant and the trying to get a get a rise out of everyone around, keeping your entire environment in chaos. And
Hmm.
I see that's what's going on in society right now. We have a society on all these different levels that are um, they're getting stirred up because it's easy to control people when they're emotionally off balance. When they're either on the a high of the roller coaster or the down of the roller coaster, they're easy to control and manipulate then. Because when you're in the middle, you're balanced. You're looking at it from more of an objective point of view than a subjective, and you're just looking at it as just data coming in with no emotion or very little. You're not so easy to get upset, which takes practice, by the way. Isn't that what all the sages of old say? I mean, Bob, you've been engrossed in the Gnostic version. I really am. I love the Gnostic version myself. It's more, to me, it's more aligned to the North American Indian version that I was taught.
Well, the whole thing of meditation and calming your mind, the best Zen masters that have been at it for a lifetime say that in a lifetime, if you manage to amass 2 to 3 minutes, you're a superstar. So that's how ingrained the voices are in us. And for thousands of years, it's been a battle of the conscious versus the subconscious, the co-option, the coercion, the mind control, the programming. I mean, some of it encoded by nature, some of it encoded, through evolution. And I don't mean like Darwin's evolution. I just mean, the course of time. And then most definitely some of it encoded for all the wrong reasons, for reasons of control, manipulation, shame, failure, name it. 9 out of the 10 voices in my head are saying, press the trigger. Don't go for a quorum.
Hey, I was there just a couple weeks ago. But the voices in the head that most people deny they have, that is the biggest problem with people I see is they don't distinguish the difference between them and the voices. That is a huge accomplishment, just getting that far and getting that understanding. That
Literal
was in my,
head.
Well,
what's that?
the other thing too is, when we were talking about this earlier briefly, the whole light and lovey spiritual, you know, diabetes sect, they're as co-opted, if not more co-opted than any of the other, divisions that you want to talk about. Like you say, they want to keep us divided, they want to keep us running around on a thing. The light and lover thing, part of the problem is, even if you're not in the whirlwind, you're surrounded by the whirlwind, so you have to have a zero, you have to have a base, you have to have a frame of reference, and people don't have that anymore. They're not grounded in anything anymore. They just like blow around all over the place. So part of that is the I time, the me time. Like I talk about, if you want to change the world, you change it 3 feet, 6 feet, 9 feet at a time. Okay, well, before you decide to, go on about anything, what's the 3 feet around you like? What's the 6 feet around you like? Okay, and I mean in its totality, physically, mentally, emotionally. That concept has been totally perverted into the I, me, mine thing, where, like, there's all these light and lovers, they're all spiritual, gurus. They're either better than you, or they're chasing somebody that they think is better than them, and they're internalizing like all of this stuff. So you look at them like the Christians who, they claim to be Christians and have Christian values, and they want to, kill all the Muslims. Like, there's a real Christian value for you. Okay, that whole sense of contradiction hasn't just been applied to things that we perceive are negative. The damage really comes because we don't look at the harm that we think are the positive programs, because when we look at them, they're really not positive. And that, I think, is the thing that comes with the age and the time, and how we're talking about, like, you get these things at childhood, but until you experience them, until you ride them out, and until you find some mechanism that you maintain your own baseline and you can decide for yourself whether something's positive or something's negative without that pressure, then yeah, you're internalizing something that's probably going to make you physically sick.
You were talking about that before, Bob. Is anger negative or positive? And it's neither. It's the
It
way
is.
it's interpreted in your life and in your body and how you handle it.
There's another side to things. People are like, well, how do you know? How do you know? How do you know? Well, because there's another side to this coin. How do I know that if you internalize this stuff, you're going to cause yourself physical harm? Because if you learn to do the opposite, like any good martial artist, you achieve the ability to have your body do things that it couldn't do otherwise. There's another side to this too. We always talk about it from the negative health side, but from the positive health side, there's all kinds of documented feats on that would be considered quote unquote superhuman by all different kinds of sects and disciplines and whatever. It works both ways. I mean, we always talk about digging ourselves out of some sort of pit. Okay? Oh, we're harmed, we're damaged, we're this, we're that. What did I say before the show? Yeah, you know what? Your parents and your grandparents fucked you. Get over it. Okay? That's it. Okay? This is where you are. Okay? And if you're always digging out of a pit, guess what? You're not going to get past where you need to be past. So this isn't just about getting back to some stasis. This is about making your life better. This is about not getting into that good bad black white this that this. Oh my God, woe it's me. It is what it is, and this is what you can do to get past it. At least this is what helped me, or this is what worked for me. And we all have our instances of massive successes, and we all have our instances of massive failures. Sometimes they'll be the same for each other, and sometimes they'll be different. But by getting them out there and sharing them, you're giving somebody else the opportunity to be able to say, hey, you know what, this isn't such a deep big pit I dug myself into. There's a lot of people in this same boat, and we can get past it. It's not always like I'm climbing, dredging uphill.
Community.
Sorry, I ranted. But
No.
Will and I had an interesting conversation before the show, so it was sort of set up. Sorry, Will.
That's fine.
Well, I mean, part of what we're discussing here tonight, though, is how these emotions affect the body. So, I mean, Will, you have a lot of experience with people that you're able to get them to a certain point, and then the healing seems to either stop or almost reverse. Am I correct? And I'm sure Cheryl and I have had similar experiences. So you have to assume at that point what else is going on.
Yeah, because if you're the body, for the most part, you can heal a lot of things very quickly, but it's the stuffed emotions or the stored negative emotions in the body that we come up against eventually. For most people, I'll say just about everybody, to a point. There are a few people that I haven't ever had those problems with, but they're like, I had an old cowboy, 70 years old, many years ago in Montana. He was fairly easy to deal with, but he lived his life straightforward,
Right.
didn't regret anything, and the body responded very well. Then there's other people that they live in blame, shame, guilt. They've been traumatized beyond belief. And I can speak my own. I mean, all I gotta do is look at myself, and that. I mean, in my 20s, I had multiple voices in my head that were constantly talking to me. And that was the most frustrating thing, because I lived on the farm, and worked on the farm, or I was driving truck, or I was alone a lot. and most of the equipment that we didn't have radios in it. So all you had was you. And it used to bother me. So I just set out on a journey, figured out what that voice was. Well, it's our ego and our identity. It's like the sum total of all of our past experience, at least mostly negative experience, because negative experiences we have to be aware of more than positive for life and death situations. And if you come out of childhood with the level of post-traumatic stress that I had, you had multiple voices. I discovered that with a really good friend of mine who was a Vietnam vet who was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress syndrome, was a PTSD. And he had multiple voices. So I'm like, well, I was not in the military, but yet I have these things. We need to figure out what this is, I think, because if I could get that to stop, because that's most of my problem.
Right.
And that's where the CD that we use, Getting Out of Your Head, comes from, because the voice is only in here.
Yes.
It's not anywhere else. And now I know there are all these different components and all these different levels of our identity and the ego. I am so thankful that I have a very, very loud, passionate ego because it keeps me alive. I've been through a lot of, well, I've even had a few death experiences. So, but I'm here, I'm alive. It's kept me alive this far. But the problem is that if you are allowing that voice to lead you through life, then things become a problem because you're going to only be seeing the negative. Oh no, the boogeyman's over here, and that's out to get me over there. And oh my God, I tripped on the rug when I was little, and the rug's flat. And this is where the OCD, the um, multiple personalities, the just the craziness in your life where you try to go to sleep at night and you can't because of the anxious, the anxiety, and the voices.
I get it too. When your mind starts to go, starts to turn.
Yeah, that's your survival mechanism. And when you're trying to go to sleep, it doesn't work very well to go to sleep if that survival mechanism is running full bore, trying to tell you all the alarms going off.
Right. Gotta fix
What's
it.
that noise?
Gotta do that. Yep.
What's that, Nancy?
Well, exactly what you're saying. When you're going to sleep, you start thinking of all the things you have to fix and work on and do, and it's hard to sleep sometimes.
It takes a concerted effort to shut that off. I can go to sleep in 2 minutes. I mean, it takes effort, and it's taken me years, decades. I started in the late 80s with looking at what this is. And now, actually, there's science now and actual academics that's coming around to substantiate just in the last couple of years, what I found out, 30 years ago, 25 years ago.
Right.
And I'm seeing it over and over and over with people, and we're dealing with people all over the world, almost all exclusively by phone or the computer like this. We don't see hardly anybody anymore in person. And this problem is across the world. This ego identity. And there again, we talk about on our show on Wednesdays or once in a while about a book called The Biology of Aggression.
Oh, yeah, we were just talking about that. Mm-hmm.
And that book was written in the 80s from research from the 50s. And I see right now the behaviors, especially on the internet, that is being pushed, that's causing emotional chaos all around us. Because people have been engineered, socially engineered, they have lost discernment because they've lost connection with themselves because of that ego is running wild so much in their head.
Well, sure, there's so much telling us how to feel, how to look, how to be. And then, of course, the people you're hanging with, you're getting a lot of information from them as well. What's okay, what's not okay. There's all that.
But show
All
me
of
okay. Show me good. Show me right. Show me wrong. I mean, Delenn really got that ingrained into me now. Show it to me. No such thing. It's all an illusion.
it's all
It's
your
about what works. What's that?
it's all your perspective, isn't it? On I mean, whatever your choices are in life,
The
it's
perception.
your yeah, exactly. It's how you're interpreting your life and what's right for you, what's not, and then of course how other people feel about your choices. So those create all kinds of emotional issues in people. Uh,
You made a very good point there, Nancy. The what other people?
Other people in our lives, our
Yeah.
family members, or
I say phooey on them because their voices in their head and their trauma from their childhood and their unresolved their emotions, they're trying to keep you in their sewage pond. And if everyone would start just doing their own thing, as in individually, and stop worrying about these other people and their suggestions. I mean, I'm not saying don't be, I'm not saying be mean to them or anything on that regard, but, and this happens over and over again. I've got three people easily, I got more than that, but three off the top recently is they're choosing not to do chemotherapy or radiation. They're choosing to work with us.
yes,
I had one lady had to move out of her home, 50 years old with a family, move out of her home and move in with her friend because her whole family, her husband, her parents, aunts and uncles were all hounding her to do chemotherapy and radiation, and she refused. So she moved out of her home, moved into a friend's house for a while, and cancer is like almost gone in no time. It was really infections.
right.
But who are these other people to be forcing their ideals on their mom, their wife, their daughter, when this lady is obviously choosing another path? For one, it's healthier because there's no chemicals involved. For two, there's no radiation involved. For three is she's with people that are there supporting her decisions to not use medical toxic radiation and chemicals. She wants to do things naturally, and she's choosing to work with us, as well as another natural cancer clinic in California. That's what drives me insane. This is why when I bought my farm, I put a big gate across my driveway, so I didn't have to let people into my place. This is mine because I grew up with no barrier, no boundaries in my life as a kid.
Right.
I could get shook down anytime. My parents could come into my room, go through my drawers, root through my toy box, check under the bed. I had no privacy. The only privacy I had was in my head. When for a Virgo, that's a dangerous place sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
So
don't
what's
you
that?
find different cultures, different, maybe less cultures, but different families seem to have different definitions of what's right and wrong and what level of privacy. Now, for instance, my my family was a little more private. I they generally didn't, you know, try to get too much into what I was doing. In other words, I had privacy. I could go in my room and close the door, and I was by myself. Now, my husband's family, his mother would walk in the room at any given moment. Could be in the middle of the night. She'd just fly the door open, and she was there. So now there is no privacy there. That's like, but everybody has a different level of what they'll accept and what feels right to them, I guess. See, now, me not growing up with that, when I saw her doing things like that, it was horrifying to me. I was like, oh my God, but he's used to that. See, so that's in his face, and he's okay with it. At least he
Well,
said.
when you're terrorized as a kid, you don't have a choice. It's either you can't run, you can't fight back because you're going to get beat down. I did,
Hmm.
and I just give up fighting because it was easier to like give in. And all I did is I was waiting for the day I could move out,
Right.
or the day I could leave. My father let me work with him in the family business from a teenager, and from 13, 14 years old, I was out of that house as much as I possibly could because I hated it. Now, not everyone has that experience, but those that do happen to be the majority of society. There are surveys out there now that 64 to 78% of all children, especially born in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, all have one or more adverse childhood experience. If you take the ACEs test, Adverse Childhood Experience Test, um,
Hmm. Which
that's a
is
high percentage of society.
that's that book you were talking about, right? Will the childhood disrupted?
Childhood, childhood disrupted.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of books. I got
Hmm.
all kinds of. I've been really engrossing myself. Here, Trauma and Memory. Peter Levine. I really like him. Really got a lot of good information. Um, there's another one called The Unspoken Voice by him, and the point is that we haven't been nurtured in a way, and we haven't been taught how to manage to manage our emotions. This society we live here, and especially in this country and all the NATO countries, as far as that goes,
Hmm.
it's like engineered to be chaotic. And the thing is that all this information that's coming out on these 40 and 50-year studies is that here, this is me, my cup. And when we're born, we start putting drops or trauma things. Drop, drop, got slapped in the mouth, got slapped in the head, fell down the steps, horse kicked me, fell off the horse, fell off the bike, took the bike, ran into the post, ran into the fence, all this stuff at one drop at a time.
Right.
But it doesn't get full until we're like 30, 40, 50 years. And then when the cup is full, your bodies cannot hold the trauma anymore, so we get sick. Fibromyalgia,
Right.
lupus, Crohn's, chronic this, that, acute that. And because most people don't see patterns, especially 30-year patterns,
Exactly.
barely people remember what they ate yesterday for dinner, so they can't track it. That's huge. Because I'm looking at myself, noticing my patterns. We have 3-day patterns, 5, 7-day patterns. We have monthly patterns. We have yearly patterns. I have a pattern that I took a few years right after my dad died. My dad died in July, committed suicide basically, drove a truck over a cliff. And for 2 years, between July and my birthday's in August, because my birthday is another yearly pattern, because my birthday usually got forgotten because school is starting. So I have issues around my birthday almost every year. Haven't for a few years because I've been diligently doing my inner work. I had issues around in July when my dad died for a couple years. I actually got pneumonia twice
Oh,
because I was never taught how to grieve. I didn't know that. My parents never taught us any of that stuff. None of my mentors taught me that until I got way older. I mean, my dad died 10 years ago, and all of a sudden I got pneumonia.
wow.
I
That's pretty heavy.
fixed the pneumonia, and 30 days later I came back. It was my birthday.
Wow.
We're not taught these fundamental things anymore in our society. And So there's a book that I refer to a lot, and it's called Your Body Speaks Your Mind.
Oh, yeah. Great book.
And there's a whole bunch of information, Louise Hayes and Hay House, that puts out in that regard, that talks about how our body gives us signals and represents where the trauma and where the stored emotion, negative emotions are.
What do you think is going on with some people, though, where, in fact, you met this woman. You can tell stuff is going on within them. You could just feel it. You just pick it up from them. They're tight. They're just full of angst, right? She came to one of our talks. I won't mention the name, but meanwhile, she's not really expressing any illness. So what goes on with that? It's almost like holding down a lid or something, and maybe at some point it just explodes. Or what's your theory on that?
Well, you can shut off the immune system several different ways, and some people, well, it's called what, hyperimmune. Hyperimmune. Mine was the other way. It went hypersensitive.
Ah, okay. I see what
I
you're
was allergic to everything. I was sensitive to everything. I had food allergies, environmental allergies. I mean, all I had to do was sit and listen to somebody fighting in another house, in another room, somebody I didn't even know, and my gut would get tight. I would like clench up, the muscles in my back would get tight. I mean, a lot of times I went to bed crying because my parents were fighting, throwing stuff around the house, hollering at each other. So I'm triggered by other things because that's a memory that I have.
Absolutely.
So for like 15 years of my life, my parents fought. They pretty much fought their whole entire life. They very, very seldom were like loving, caring, happy family. I did not come from that. I mean, out in public, you have that appearance because my dad would smile, my mom would smile. We were taught we needed to smile because we were out in public, so I was taught to be fake. I was taught to lie. Most people are taught to lie.
Now that's another whole topic, which exactly.
Well, is it really, or is it the same topic?
Well, it is, but I'm bringing up the whole what we do with those emotions. Now, some people express them in kind of angry ways, and maybe that's more positive. But some people, like myself, kind of repress things, push things down, don't express.
So there, you were maybe brought up in a house that you weren't allowed to express. I couldn't express anything. If we expressed anything, we got beat.
Now, Bob has a lot of information on that as well, because we've had a lot of conversations about repressing emotions and not expressing it, and what that does to the body. Now, I'm not necessarily dealing with a lot of health issues. I'm fairly healthy, but yet it does have an effect on me, you know. So it's just an interesting. I'd love to hear what you have to say about that, Bob. Are you still there? Still with us? Yep. Did we lose Bob? You might be dealing with
He's there, but he's muted. Maybe he had to step out or something.
You might. But that's another whole side of this. You know, like I said, some people are very angry. They lash out at other people and express their emotional being that way. But then others
hold it in.
Hold it in, exactly. Did you hear that, Bob? We were asking you your feelings on repressed emotions and what that possibly causes, or what that would do.
Well, if they're truly repressed, like if you're repressing, well, here's the thing. You have to understand the dynamic. From the ages of birth to like 6 or 7, when your brain is physically growing, your primary method of learning is tactile. It's subconscious. It's literally wiring and programming your brain. That's why little kids can learn languages so easily. Okay? At the age of 7, when that closes, is when learning turns into a cerebral rationalization thing. Okay, so there's no way to intellectualize to a 2-year-old that the stove is hot, because a 2-year-old doesn't intellectualize. He learns by burning himself. Okay, so you have this thing of there are behaviors in you that are almost hard-coded in you. Well, there are ones that are definitely hard-coded in you. Then there are these ones that you develop in youth. Now, on top of that, we put all this quote-unquote intellectualization. Okay, the point is this. We all know people that we say, they're compelled to person is compelled to overshare, or we'll find out something about a person and it's like, oh my God, that's shocking, I didn't know that. It's that whole matter of perspective thing. If you're repressing something that you need to release, or if there's something running inside you that causes your life harm and you don't want to admit that, and you try to intellectualize your way out of it, it don't matter how conscious and aware and awake you claim to be, you cannot intellectualize out these behaviors. Okay? To repress them in that sense, yeah, it inhibits everything. I mean, just look at it from the standpoint of everyday life. If you're marginally upset and you eat a meal, what do you get? You get agita. Don't eat when you're upset type of thing. I mean, do you need any more of a smack in the face of that's just the tip of the iceberg of your biological responses? Okay? So different emotions, and it depends on school. I mean, my perspective and background is all like traditional Chinese, Eastern, Oriental medicine. So there are most definitely correlations between organs that are stressed by different emotions, what kind of emotions that you're repressing, and this goes chemically and energetically. And people want to poo-poo that and be like, that's whatever. But the fact of the matter remains is that these organs in your body actually drive the processes that give you the biology to have these experiences. Okay? When your brain and your biology do not agree is where we have a problem. So, if you're withholding, if you're one of those persons who's closeted, and it's a positive strengthening experience to you, you'll know that. Okay, and you're faced with the adversity of people being like, oh, you're closing, oh, you're this, you're that, you're not sociable, blah 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 blah. There's the bullshit in the programming. Okay, so you can take something that's positive, that somebody uses as a positive characteristic, and you can have society turn it around and make that person feel like crap about themselves because of it. Okay, so when you say repression is positive or negative, what's the context? What's the environment? What is it doing for me? When is it appropriate for me to do this? When is it not appropriate for me to do this? And once you start thinking that way, then again, you're not clawing your way out of a pit. Okay, now it's like instead of trying to stop the negative, you're trying to enhance the positive. Because again, we all have these things in us. Right. Okay, we all have the conflicts in us, and this is the other thing too. 2015 is the year of butthurt. Everybody's pissy, whiny butthurt. You offend me. You offend me. Well, you disgust me. Okay, because here's the thing about being butthurt. Get over it. Okay, who are you? Who am I? Like, I care. Okay, and this is what I say: people have no grounding. Okay, why is somebody else's uninformed opinion of you more important than your opinion of yourself? Okay, so you get into that situation once again where, what does it do to your health to repress things? Well, that's what it does. It'll make you stronger, it'll make you weaker. What's your perspective and what's your particular skill set? Okay, and this is again why it's so important, to be aware, to be aware of those things that, like, whether they're from your childhood or your past or whatever. It's like, I had this experience, I was conditioned to believe, okay, that this should be positive, but it was really bullshit. Well, it's that other thing we hear too now in the age of butthurt is, don't think with your feelers and don't feel with your thinkers. How about I smack you with my smacker? Okay, it's one of those things where we're being ingrained to not trust, don't make an emotional decision. Okay, this is the problem. What you're dealing with here, the conflict, is an emotional part of your body, a physical part of your body. Your enteric nervous system that controls all these, reptilian level, it's actually sub-reptilian, survival mechanisms. It's that thing, like the expressions, I have a feeling in the pit of my stomach. That's not a figure of speech. You really get a feeling there under those conditions. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. Again, it's not a figure of speech. And those are just two examples of all kinds of physical sensitivities that we have to our environment. Because our emotions are so polluted over it, you get into that situation of, I can't trust my gut, I can't trust my instincts, I can't rationalize out of it. And you know what? There are people out there that shouldn't make emotional decisions. I agree with that 100%. But I'm not one of them. Okay? It's what is unique for you. If I disconnect my feeling from a decision, I will make a bad decision because I can feel more than I can figure out. Okay?
Right.
So you have that thing too. So again, when we're talking about this health thing, just think of health in terms of a physical component. Your emotions, physically, chemically, biologically, are a part of your body as equally as your fingernails and your hair are. So to say that one doesn't affect another is just ludicrous and insane. You have that in you. You have that connection to your environment. You have that antenna. I mean, Bruce Lipton said, the cell wall doesn't mimic a semiconductor. It is a semiconductor, okay? And an antenna, and he goes through all the science of it. So anytime you close yourself off from that for any reason is a negative effect on you. Okay.
Well, we're taught that, though, aren't we? I mean, we're kind of taught to shut our body down, not to trust it, not to trust our instincts.
Some people are, absolutely. And, in different things. It's like, the first thing that pops into my head are the old black and white school reels from Catholic school about teenage boys controlling their urges and things like that, and all the ridiculous the one about the pot, the weed, I don't even remember what it is, all those crazy fear and scare tactics to try to control our behaviors. But here's the situation. Pick weed. Suppose you grew up adopted by Cheech and Chong, and your entire life you smoked pot, okay? That meme provided your income, your well-being, your safety, your parents. You did it your entire life and never had a negative experience. Until one day you're traumatized by being pulled over, or just by some anti-drug person, or just by some psycho that turns the entire marijuana experience of your life upside down because you were never aware of it as anything other than positive. And suddenly you're like on Mars and you're a felon. How do you process that? How do you process it when you're 10 or 12? How do you process that when you're 20? What do? Do you hide? Do you smoke in a closet? Do you get a bong? Do you torture yourself, into quitting? Do you shame yourself into going to Narcotics Anonymous? What do you do? How do you cope with it? How do you deal with it?
Mm-hmm. Interesting. It's all interesting stuff. Now, what about the topic of releasing these emotions? Okay, so we talked about repressing it, but are there different techniques, different ways to release these things safely without destroying yourself, destroying others? I mean, anybody want to talk on that?
Why would you necessarily take the assumption that the process is destructive?
Good point.
You're asking me for a positive method, of my opinion of a positive method of release that's non-destructive. There's the problem right there. How can you apply those two rules together without cognitive dissonance?
Interesting point.
If me releasing what I need to release to be healthy is in fact damaging to someone else, perhaps I have an issue, okay? Or perhaps I'm applying something that doesn't really apply. Okay, maybe, okay, here, let me put it to you this way. I grew up first generation American Italian family. Huggy, kissy men are a part of life, okay? I knew no other way. You hug my brother, my father, whatever, and you kiss them. That's the culture. You know, certain places I moved to, once we moved out of the neighborhood and moved to, like, you know, upstate New York, what are you, a fag?
Yeah.
Why would I be a fag? Zero frame of reference. Absolutely, I had zero frame of reference to even know I was being insulted. I couldn't draw the correlation in my head. Okay? So, you have that whole situation. You talk about, like, how do you deal with things? Well, you know what? In your brain, in your mind, it's like, oh, what am I supposed to do? Kick this guy's ass and vent? Or how is this supposed to? No, you know what it is? The solution, very simply, is, and this is like kind of weird, express what you're being mocked for. You know, it's like one of those things where, you know, you don't need to hide something. You don't need to defend something. If you believe in who you are, you don't need to defend it. You just need to be it. Okay? So it's like one of those things like, you're an idiot. And that's the end of the conversation. Okay? Because my life's altered none, because I'm still going to do what I need to do. And so in that particular instance, my release would be expressing that physical love for somebody, you know, despite what anybody thinks.
Right. But you're a very strong person, Bob. Your psyche is very strong. Now, not everybody is like that. So now we're dealing with people who have issue with that. So what would you say on that?
Everyone want to go heaven, no one want to get dead.
Yeah.
Okay? There are no shortcuts. It takes time. Nobody's perfect. Do the work. Okay? Don't sit around and be butthurt. Don't sit around and think that you're going to burst into a ball of light and float away with fluffy bunny unicorn farts. Okay? We live in a world that's full of stress and emotion and trauma. Ground yourself. Okay? It's not like I'm incredibly emotionally or mentally strong. It's perspective and grounding and who I surround myself with. Ground yourself. What's important to you? What parts of this rat race are you going to put your attention to? Who are you going to pay attention to? Who are you paying attention to? How much of what you do in your day is because of what you want to, because of what you feel you have to, or you don't even know you're doing it? Start there. It's a fairly horrifying experience, and it does scare a lot of people, and it's easier to do when you have objective friends to do it with. But once you establish that baseline, then you will realize, and I promise you this, it takes more energy and you do more harm and you burn more calories trying to avoid this shit than you need any sort of strength or energy to enable it. And that's the big trick and the big secret, and that's what they don't want you to know.
Yeah.
It takes more energy to be a fraud than it does to be legitimate.
Ah, good point. Wow.
Kind of related to that, in the ACEs material that Will's been talking about lately, they have 2 different questionnaires, and they have maybe, I don't know, 10 to 14 questions each, but one is the traumatic events in your life, but then another one is your resiliency to what you've experienced, that you've had in the past. And like for some people, I know like Will, he had a very high score in the traumatic events, yet his resiliency was very high. And like for myself, I only had like one adverse um, event, but my resiliency was super low. So we're all kind of at different places. And
Yeah, well, more than the trauma is the resiliency makes more of a that's an important aspect too, because you can go through trauma and if like you had one little trauma or one little area of trauma, and then you have very low resiliency, so therefore you have trouble, then that equals like low immunity, that more susceptible to outside influence on mental psychological information, not just physical health. But on the other aspects, my resiliency was pretty high because of whatever reason. It was because I'm going to make it through this. I had a determination that I'm going to make it through this because I wanted to leave home. I wanted to get away from that.
yeah, a
And
lot
so
has to do with your
my
support.
resiliency was up. Oh, go ahead, Cheryl.
Oh, I just meant a lot of it had to do with the support of like your community or your family that you had around you in developmental years and the resiliency
I was
outside of
fortunate.
that.
I had a bunch of old guys that liked me, or they at least shared information with me, because I didn't get to meet my grandfathers, but I had a lot of adopted grandfathers because my father was older and all his friends were older. So I hung around these old guys, and that was my mentors a lot, were these old guys, and they gave me a lot of tidbits, a little bitty here, a little bit of this. If you want to handle this, this is what you should do. Maybe you should try doing this. So I had a really awesome experience. I didn't have one grandpa or two grandpas. I had like a dozen grandpas. And they shared with me. I would spend weeks at some of their houses, and it's just when I was a kid, my that's just what happened a lot of times. And so I got that benefit of the diversity of perspectives, of diversity of opinions, diversity of thoughts. So it was a blessing for me after I figured out that what it was, and that wasn't too many years ago that I figured out it was a blessing. Otherwise, it was this curse. I had no friends my age. I didn't get along with kids my age very well. All my friends, I got along with their parents as well as them because I was brought up around old people or older people. So
Will,
I just learned to adapt.
Will something now you offer Psyche, which maybe you want to discuss a little bit because that deals with, I guess, emotional issues as well, but things that wind up in our subconscious. Um, it, I guess that's another way of releasing certain things, certain,
Well, we have to define some things.
go for it.
So can you hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So we got to define some things. So Site K is just a modality,
Right,
a tool that brings harmony in the programs that are stored in the body that are conflicting between our conscious mind and our subconscious mind. And when you bring harmony to them, the body responds in a positive way towards health. You get rid of illness when you change your programming. It's no different than your computer, because I look at the meat suit here, as a computer, literally a some with philosophies or some frames of thought call this thing a biological computer.
right.
But genetics is saying that our cells are like little, um, what's the word? Bob, you just mentioned it earlier.
Semiconductors.
Semiconductors, exactly. Like our body is so much like a computer that people are calling it a biological computer. Our body, our hard drive, our body, our subconscious mind, same thing. And when you have a program that was put there when you're 2, or maybe it was put there while you were still in the womb. A negative program, like I'm not good enough, I can't do it. And now I'm 50 and I'm wondering why, or I'm 60 and I'm wondering why I have these sabotages going on. Because that program, when, say, you were in the womb of I can't do it, now, 30, 40, 50 years later, you still can't do it. Because that's the default program that's downloaded in there from basically conception to 6 to 7 years of age. You're just downloading information straight away. Plain hard drive, just downloading. The term is, especially from birth to about 6 or 7 years in, what's called a hypnagogical, um, lost the word again, uh, um, trance, a state of mind. You're
That's
just
the
like downloading information from your environment straight away.
hmm
What's that?
it's the brain waves on a certain level. Is it theta?
Exactly. I believe you're in, yeah, I believe it's in theta, where you're just taking all the information in as fact. Well, I grew up in kind of a crazy house. I was 3 years old, and I remember walking up the steps. Maybe it was two or three, walking up the steps in the brand new house my dad was building, and there was no handrails, and there was slivers, and there was dust and dirt, and the guys hammering away. I remember this clear as day, and I got screamed at. My mom screamed at me because I was walking up the steps. There's no handrail, and there's all kinds of construction in the house going on.
Yes.
I got taught as a young age that the world is not safe because I got hollered at all the time for all these weird stuff. I'm just wanting to explore, and every time I want to explore, I get screamed at. No, don't do that. Get back here. What are you doing?
I see that a lot in young mothers today. They're freaking out. I mean, I have that in my family. They freak out because the child might be close to a step or something like. I mean, literally scream out at the child, and I'm thinking, how about just slowly guide the child away, or even, dare we say, let them make a mistake. They will learn when they trip that didn't feel good. I think I won't do that again. You know what I mean?
That's
Just
one
kick
of the
them down the
biggest
flight of
problems.
stairs and get it over with.
What's that, Bob?
Just kick them down the flight of stairs and get it over with.
Get it over it. Bob, you're really low in volume. I don't.
Better.
Yes, much better. What were you saying, Bob? Kicking down the stairs.
Well, we seem to have this thing as intellectuals to poo-poo negative reinforcement. Conversely, one of the things that Will and I share is a childhood predominantly consisting of nothing but negative reinforcement. So yeah, there needs to be a balance, but again, there needs to be a balance. Okay, when the child is in this physical stage of learning, okay, negative reinforcement abounds because that's life. With this participate, everybody gets a trophy for participating. Yeah, okay, I want my job interview trophy. I want my promotion trophy. Okay, the world doesn't work this way. We're creating this one delusional reality of ideals that doesn't exist, and then trying to force ourselves to live them in a 3D reality that they don't work in. And part of my own personal thing is like Will was talking about modalities. A part of this reprogramming is physical. Okay, you cannot intellectualize this. Your programming can only be changed by a redistribution of energy, the reprogramming. Basically speaking, these programs run in their subconscious, and what they're doing is looking for sensory input. That's what they do. You can't talk to them. They don't speak in words. You can't rationalize with them. They are completely physical. Okay, so this is because they are your meat suit's interface to your physical reality. So these programs are running and they're looking for physical experience. So pick a topic. Let's suppose that you were a fat kid. So the entire time that you were a fat kid, you know, people made comments about what you're eating, how you're eating, when you're eating, this you're eating, that you're eating. Okay, and so you develop with this pattern ingrained. Okay, now as an adult, it's quite simple to intellectualize a healthy diet, exercise, this, that's this. But what happens? We start our diet, we sabotage ourselves in 48 hours. We start exercise and we don't last a week. Why is it? Because all those words of this makes perfect sense are no match for that program that was put into you when you were a kid. Okay? So until you experience positiveness in your changes, the programs won't come and the programs won't alter themselves, and you're setting yourself up for danger. So if the first thing for failure, like the example we're talking about for diet, the first thing for failure is if the entire concept is limiting and disgusting for you, you're not going to get through it. Okay, so if you're on one of those diets where you have to suck lint off a carpet for 6 weeks, guess what? Don't even start it. Okay, you have to start with the frame of mind of, I'm changing my diet and I'm going to make my diet bigger, broader, and better. I'm not going to restrict it. Okay, I can restrict my caloric intake without restricting my choices. I can balance my nutrition without restricting my choices. In fact, it's easier if I have broader, more choices. But people don't look at things that way, so they set themselves up for failure. And you're never going to change that program until you convince your physical meat suit that the act of eating is not a self-deprecating, horrible thing that makes you a miserable, fat human being.
Yeah. And that applies to all kinds of topics.
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying you're not a miserable, fat human being. You may very well be, but if you want to get past, like in this example, your food thing, okay, that's what you need to change. You need to be able to say to yourself, you know, the fork didn't make me fat.
Now you talk a lot about triggers too. How does that apply into this? Because that's all emotional triggers. These are things that
it depends on who you are and your background. And what kind of triggers that we're talking about, but basically speaking, what a trigger is something that your physical being has such a visceral response to, it bypasses your conscious filter. Okay, most people. Okay, back up a little bit. The human brain can absorb information at a rate that technology has not been able to duplicate. We have computers that computate and store, okay? But to actually receive the speed at which we can feed them information is still our weak point. One of the ways they've got around it is that they have biological inputs for supercomputers now. They actually use laboratory-grown brain cells to feed these computers. So basically speaking, the human mind sucks up orders of magnitude more information than it can store and process well. Okay, so you have all this crap stuck in your head that you have no way to get to, or you don't know about, or you're not even aware of. After a while, some of it fades and some of it's kept. Okay, so you're constantly absorbing more information than you are able to store, access, or process. The more that you can trust your feelings and your autopilot, the more you can process. Okay? Once you start putting your programs and your filters and your rose-colored glasses and all your intellectualizations up, okay, you're processing roughly 17% of the stimulus that's reaching you because you're applying all these mental rules to it. Okay, while you're applying all these mental rules, your subconscious, your enteric nervous system's got its own interpretation. So a trigger is anything that you have such a visceral response to that it gets past your intellectual filters and causes some sort of physical reaction in your body that's like undescribable by your own words. Okay. I'm trying to think of like a good example. But in any event, yeah. So people's triggers are. Oh, here, I'll give you something stupid. Okay. Suppose, and this is a fairly common one. Suppose you're one of those people whose father ruined with the iron belt. Okay, and it was that whole drama, like they made sitcoms and movies out of it. You know, the drama of the belt, the drawing of the belt, the unbuckling of the belt, the pulling of the belt. That's it. Get my belt, my belt, my belt, my belt, my belt, my belt. Okay, you're making faces at me. This is not like off the range here.
No, it's great. This is great.
Okay.
I can relate.
Yeah, I was watching Will actually. I was over there like, yep, I know about this.
But here's the thing. I know people who, and I'm describing it in a mocking way because the belt paradigm is something that it culturally was taken to an absurd extreme by the late 70s when the Alan Alda Fluffy Bunny Man came about. But the fact of the matter is, I actually know people that won't wear a belt, use a belt, be near a belt, freaks them out like some people are afraid of spiders.
Wow. Okay, I see.
Okay?
Yeah.
On the other side of the coin, I also know other people that accept it as a part of their youth, accept it as a part of their culture, right or wrong, and just have gotten past that issue. And maybe like we were talking about resiliency, maybe the particular person, and this is where it becomes unique. Okay, if you're of the biology that you can absorb a lot of physical pain and you're emotionally and physically capable of doing that, okay, then physical pain won't be very traumatizing to you. Okay, so in that particular situation, the belt trauma may not affect another person. If you're somebody else, if your personality or biology is that which cowers and is afraid and whatever, then that same experience with a belt or even a lesser experience is going to be incredibly traumatizing to you. So again, it's two people can have the same experience and it doesn't affect them the same way. The triggers won't be the same, and yet we like to go out and paint these broad sweeping generalizations, and you just can't do it. We each need to be grounded individually as best we can be, where we are, who we are, and what's important to us. And then you have to realize that it's your entire past that got you here. So if you are terrified of belts and you have no idea why, okay, it's probably like a good indication that you need to do some soul searching and you need to be honest with it, about this. And I will say that they're like the two strangest days in my life is the first day I heard my father's words come out of my mouth, and the second day that it happened, or the second time that it happened, not only did his words come out of my mouth, but I realized he was right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's all of this crap sounds so cliche, because the wisdom of the ancients has never left us, as far as I'm concerned. We have all these expressions and all these colloquialisms that are not figures of speech, and we've been led to believe that they're just colorful figures of speech, but they're not. Okay. We hear all of these expressions, nothing new under the sun. Now, of course, I grew up with so many of them in Italian, I can't put any of them straight. But all of these old words of wisdom, okay, they've been rephrased culturally, but they're still all there, and they're basically what we would call nowadays common sense, but common sense is neither nowadays. And if you actually step back and look, okay, it's not about who's right or wrong, but it's about what's the effect overall. If you go back 50 years and you look at social interpersonal relationships, go back 100 years, look at social interpersonal relationships. Okay, I don't want to hear crap about the economy, about industry. Nobody had an eye. Fuck that. Okay? How did people treat people 100 years ago? And how do people treat other people now? And you tell me that you can consider the last 100 years progress in any stretch of the imagination. Because what has not progressed are us.
We've degressed so much in personal relationships with others.
We live our entire existence now in some form of doing what is actually impossible, proving a negative. Okay? Everything that we do, or everything that we're programmed to do in society, is to combat some sort of negative. Okay? And then we get so depressed by that we jump all over these dumbass, fluffy bunny, feel-good causes as if they matter. Oh, if you support this, press like on Facebook. No. How about if you support this, get up off your fat ass and go contribute to the cause that you support? Okay? Be a part of the positive and stop just trying to, again, claw your way out of this negative pit.
That's a really good point, because people don't act, they don't do in their virtual little world. It's like people are so disconnected from tangible reality, and that's why I like to travel, because you get to meet people face to face. It's totally different. It's a much more personal, much more fulfilling conversations, and when you're meeting people versus this internet, this virtual friendship. I mean, isn't that what's the name of that document that Patrick has on his website? Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like that particular document is happening right here in front of us. Whether it's real or not doesn't matter. People don't know how to relate to each other anymore. It's like
Because
their whole life is like this doggone thing right here, this phone thing.
Exactly.
because things become, there's, like I said, the year of butt hurt. Okay, the complete and total intolerance or inability to cope with anybody that disagrees with you. Talk about a sign of the ego run amok. But the fact of the matter is, we've been spoon-fed a reason to distrust everyone. Because it used to be like, okay, so like there's like men and women. Okay, so I'm a guy. I didn't get to make that choice, but I'm a guy. Okay, so what do? Guy things, the Boy Scouts, the this, the that. It's like, oh, I'm on a motorcycle team, I'm on a shooting team, or like whatever. It's like, okay, fine. Okay, then all of a sudden, it's like, instead of like, I joined, I don't know, whatever, the National Golf Foundation, because Will knows how much I love golf. Okay, so I joined Guys for Golf. Okay, and then it's like, okay, hey, we're all guys for golf. Then it's like, what, you're gay? You can't be in Guys for Golf, you're gay. So now there's Gay Guys for Golf. And it's like, in the Gay Guys for Golf club, it's like, hey, wait a minute, you're a cross-dressing gay guy? So now there's gay cross-dressing guys. And we subdivide and we subdivide and we subdivide till we have nothing in common. So how do you have a relationship with somebody when your immediate impression is something about this person's going to butt hurt me? What? You like chocolate sprinkles? Get out. It's fucking ludicrous. But look around, and that's exactly what's happening. Look at these organizations that protest. The gay, bi, lesbian, male, female, dog, canine, Martian Hitchhiker Association. All fucking one of you.
there's all kinds of stuff going on in colleges right now. I don't know if you've seen stuff on the news.
Oh yeah, we have the awesome one.
Yeah, like
Like I got every chick in the University of Texas walking around with a dildo hanging out of their backpack. It's genius. One of them that handed me a pamphlet said, "You realize you missed an enormous marketing potential." And she's like, "What?" I said, "You should have called the movement Cocks for Glocks. Trade in your gun and we'll give you a dildo." I was looking to buy like a warehouse full of them and have them engraved with the Moms Demand Action logo on them, Mayors Against Handguns, Dicks for Chicks, you know, whatever. This is my point. It's insane.
yeah. Yeah, but even, on the colleges right now, I think they're having issue with you can't say this and you can't believe this, and like you said, they're segregating everybody, shutting everybody down. It's a mess.
Because they're teaching it like Will said about relationships on the internet. They're teaching it in a world that has a reset button and limited consequences. Okay? If I jump in that Ferrari in Grand Theft Auto and I press the A button and press the B button and drive off a cliff, I press the reset button and go again.
Right.
If you walk through my garage door and do that exact same thing, you're going to die.
Right.
And believe it or not, people don't make that correlation anymore because there's no ramping up to it. There's no leading up. Like the first motorcycle I ever had, I was 4 years old. It was a junkyard refugee. I had to learn how to work on it, learn how to build it, well, as much as you could when you're that young. But the bottom line is I have seen kids who first motorcycle literally won a world championship 4 years prior. If that was my first motorcycle, I'd have been dead. Okay, and this is exactly my point. What we're used to at our ages as a normal progression of life, these people are not experiencing. Okay, they're not experiencing the physical consequences of starting at point A and being at point B. They're going on the internet, going straight to point D and believing their own press.
Right. You talked about that, how people think by reading a book on a topic that they're actually living it, but they're not. They're just intellectualizing it.
And every single thing I have ever instructed, which is unfortunately is a whole bunch of different things, most of them dangerous, every single, statistically speaking, in all of these things, the people that excel in the classroom, generally speaking, do horrible on the range, on the physical aspects of it. The people that do the physical aspects really well usually do poorly, not poorly, but don't do as well on the written test. And the people that ace both or fail both are usually a coin toss, because I've seen both of them go either way. And generally speaking, with those people, it's just a matter of knowing when to switch teaching modes to get them to understand something. But there is a growing disconnect between people that can intellectualize and not perform, and people that can perform and not intellectualize.
Yes. And here we go back to changing programs within ourselves and doing it physically. And that was another thing. Right before the show, we were talking about, I was asking, do these programs create our emotions, or do our emotions create the programs? And I don't know if either one.
Yes.
So maybe they're intertwined. They're one and the same. But you have a trauma in your life, or something that happens that feels like a trauma, correct? And then
okay, what is an emotion? Wait, what is?
Wait.
Wait. Stop. Go back to definitions. Tell me what an emotion is.
Textbook answer?
Yeah. An emotion is a sensation in your body, I guess. It's a
An
feeling.
emotion is you trying to intellectualize or egoize a feeling, a physical feeling. You are trying to interpret a physical feeling. Okay? As such, this is the whole thing of programming. Okay? People like, fear, fear, fear. I love fear. Okay? Fear is what causes my heart to beat faster. Fear is what motivates me. Fear is this putting myself in a position to be afraid. Okay? The woo world is like, oh, fear, the opposite of love is fear, 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 fear. Bullshit. It's part of living. Okay? Now, if you're the type of person who gets paralyzed like a deer when they're afraid, okay, you're going to have a different life philosophy than me. Okay? But the fact of the matter is, you know, we're born with certain programs nature put into us for survival. So you have that thing of, I perform a physical act and the result of that physical act is fear. Is that a negative thing? Well, for you maybe it is, but for me it's not. Okay? So
You're saying as a motivator, is that what you're saying?
as anything. Okay, like literally, even you can apply it to a negative. You can apply it to a negative feeling. Willfully putting yourself or subconsciously putting yourself in a position that you know something harmful is going to happen to you. Okay, there are a lot of people that do that. It's like a height of self-deprecation. I put myself in a position where I'm going to be attacked. I put myself in a position where I'm going to be raped. I put myself in a position there. There are people that subconsciously and sometimes semi-consciously actually perform those behaviors because for some reason they need to experience some emotion that they can't face or admit. That's a program that they can't intellectualize. So again, it becomes a matter of you say, like, what comes first, what comes first, what comes first. The bottom line is, whether you like it or not, okay, the experience comes first. Okay, you can have all the programs, you can have all the information, you can have all the whatever, but it's not going to affect your behavior whatsoever until it's appropriate. And when is it appropriate? When that experience occurs. And that's why human beings find themselves driven towards experiences that they have no conscious explanation of why they did that. I don't know why the fuck I did that. How many times have you heard that?
I use it quite often, so yes, I'm sure I'm not the only one.
This is why we have that behavior.
Right. Interesting.
So you want definition of emotion? I like this one. It's a natural, instinctive state of mind deriving from one's circumstances, mood, or relationship with others. So that's derived. The emotions are rooted or derived from our environment.
And that's basically what I just said. Is we go through life having the experiences, we're consciously considering less than 20% of the stimulus that's being thrown at us, and the other 80% is being processed physically by an entity that we've isolated ourselves from, that also happens to control physically how we move through space and time. You're an observer in an airplane with a pilot you never met.
Oh, I like that topic. And then there's people with infections of different kinds that there's the pilot they haven't met. And a lot of people with different infections are I find them doing irrational things to cause emotional stress or hormone release. And for what? Basically, you're creating hormonal chaos inside the body to fulfill some infection's desire, really. So that's another spoke on this wheel too that gets left out a lot, I think, or people just aren't aware of.
No, absolutely. And we talk a lot about that on the Wednesday show, about the parasites and the tenants that we have in our bodies. Basically speaking, the the microcultures that live inside of us outnumber our own cells.
Right.
They're millions of years old, okay, and they've, I don't want to say they've mastered it, but they've never lost it. Is they may be single-celled organisms, but they work together without conscious thought. They work together, they communicate energetically. Nobody's in charge, but everybody knows what the common good is, and everybody works. And it's even true of their adversaries. Okay? There have been laboratory experiments where one group of microculture, bacterias or whatever, will actually alter their behavior in the presence of other microorganisms to make them like beneficial. Meaning, if one group of microorganisms lives off of the byproducts of another group, then that first group of microorganisms will set up the environment so that little slave group produces for them, and then they'll come and raid all their food, type of deal. Okay, this is at a single cell level. Okay, this communication occurs. Now you have trillions of these things living in your body. Nature is full of examples where parasites hijack the conscious thoughts of the host and cause the host to perform behaviors that are suicidal. So to think that we're immune from this is insane. Okay, you have the same thing going on in you. You have a consciousness, a living culture inside your body that's got its own requirements for survival, and it will impose its will on you to get you to do things that cause it to survive, even if it harms you.
Absolutely. These are horror movies in the making, correct?
Well, no, because on the other side of the coin, they're in us for a reason. Okay. Again, I present the case. We talk about that. It's like that was the entirely negative perspective, but the fact remains is that if you just attain the attitude of I am the fucking landlord, okay, and you become aware of what you need to be in balance, then you realize that you would be dead if you didn't have this culture living in you. Okay, so to have some sort of adversarial relationship with germs and bacteria is inherently self-damaging. Okay, dip your kid in hand sanitizer, wrap him in bubble wrap, and then you wonder why he looks like fucking E.T. with big black eyes and gray skin.
Exactly. Yes. Good point. Before you go on, Bob, I just want to plug you guys have a great show, Alternate Perspective, and that is on freedomslips.com, guys. You want to say anything about that, just to plug that a little bit? Or did I just do it for you?
It sucks. Don't tune in. Will rarely shows up. When he does show up, I usually don't. And Patrick takes lots of notes.
Hi,
It's the best show on the internet.
Patrick.
And we fantasize about when we're ever going to finish the biology of aggression.
It's
Hey.
ongoing conversation, so it'll never end.
It's
By the
beyond
way-
fantasy into delusion at this point.
By the way, guys, we have 4 viewers right now. That's huge. So, hi, viewers. Thank you for watching.
Okay, so 3 of them are us.
No.
The other one's a bot. So
No.
we're good.
Outside you guys. Anyway, so that's great. I just want to plug your show. Also,
So my thing here, not to interrupt you, but I'm going to interrupt you anyway. So my thing here, well, I don't know how many of the 4 people listen to the Wednesday shows. I have grown weary of listening to everyone confirm, reconfirm, deconfirm, unconfirm everything that we have known for 10,000 years. Because I will tell you what has not changed in 10,000 years. Nobody does anything with the information. Okay? I don't need Bruce Lipton to tell me my cell walls are semiconductors. Okay? All it is a 21st century interpretation of something that's 10,000 years old. Okay? The thing that we are being robbed and denied of is the will to alter our behavior to break these programs, and then the means to alter our behavior and change these programs. And when I say means, I mean whatever tinfoil hat you want to put on, a fedora, a top hat, a freaking peak cap, I don't care. Okay? The controllers are chemically and electronically making sure that we stay on this path as well. So the means to be grounded, the means for establishing your own baseline, every day it becomes more and more and more difficult, because every day they come at you with more and more and more and more. Okay? So, you know, our diet, our activity levels, you know, all of that physical healthy stuff, okay, they make that a war as well. You know, it becomes more and more difficult to eat healthy. It becomes more and more difficult to be emotionally healthy. You know, it becomes more and more difficult to actually live in the 3D meat suit world the more that we buy into this electronic, digital, television, internet, reality TV type of crap. And no, that doesn't mean that I say that we need to go back to the stone cave land, live in log cabins in the woods, etc., etc., etc. That's not the point of any of this, although people like to take it to that extreme. But again, how much of this are you going to subject yourself to? Turn off the television. Get away from the computer. Go outside in the world. Get a dog. Okay? Seriously speaking, I think dogs should be like issued to everybody nowadays, because a dog is the best way you can learn to redevelop the social skills and the caring about another living creature that you can't do with the average human being nowadays, because you are both so emotionally closed up. And adopt, don't get from a breeder.
Words well spoken.
Yeah, good advice, because people are so disjointed, disconnected from nature. And we are, that's a big, big. I had a fella, about 4 years ago, in his 70s. He never walked in the grass or out in the dirt with bare feet.
Oh, wow.
I had him take his shirt off because he was experiencing pain, and he didn't have much money, and I was like, the only thing that I could figure out what to do was take your shirt off and go lay in the grass, back down on the moist grass in the shade. He did. Fell asleep for an hour and a half. He got up, and it was like he was drunk for the rest of that day and the following day. His body had never discharged. He was just walking around like a capacitor with just full of positive charge, I guess you might want to call it that. And then he interfaced with the earth, and his system was so out of sync with the earth, but his pain went away immediately.
Amazing. Perfect.
That's
Yeah.
how disconnected people are from nature, from the earth.
Now, here's a part about this that cracks me up. You can tell that story that Will just told to 10 people, and 8 people will tell you that it's bullshit. However, if you do a little checking, you will find out that the science of developing athletic shoes, one of the things they consider is how electrically conductive and how grounded they make the athlete to the environment. Okay, so you can sit here and say, oh, you know, that's crazy, the connecting with nature thing. Oh, really? Well, people are spending millions of dollars studying it and designing it into athletic shoes to give the human physiology that little extra edge of performance.
It's like the shoes with the copper something in it. It's like supposed to be similar.
Yeah, there's like all kinds of. It's like I said, people don't step back and look at the bigger picture, and they draw parallels, and they cry foul over here, and yet over here they see some sort of pristine environment, and it's like they don't well I'd never believe that somebody would do something on purpose, like purposefully this way. I'm like, why? If you can believe it over here that somebody would do it at this level, why would you not believe that somebody's going to do it at this level? It's like saying at some level people are going to stop lying to you.
Yeah. You guys are reminding me before when you were talking that there's a whole thing going on with this bullying craze. Anti-bullying, and the kids come home with these orange bracelets and orange shirts, and it's, talk about not knowing how to relate to each other anymore. What kind of emotional health is that creating in children? Because I don't know that that's such a positive thing. They're really controlling kids with, don't do this, don't do that. I mean,
You want to know the downside of the bullying craze?
go.
Okay, here it is, real simple. You've just told your child that he's insignificant, not worth defending, and he's defined by society's perception of him. Okay? And to have emotional fortitude is to, seek consolation in some other place. Okay? Basically speaking, you're worthless, run and hide.
Yeah. Well, these are things that I'm sure our generation can attest to. We dealt with these things on a one-on-one basis. I had kids that were bullies,
They wrote books about it. Everything I knew, everything I needed to know about life, I learned in kindergarten.
Absolutely.
Everything I needed to know about life, I learned from riding a motorcycle. Again, you're right. There's these real experiences that we had. Because you know what? Someday somebody's going to punch you in the mouth. Okay? The odds of it happening in your lifetime are pretty high unless you're a runner and a hider or something like that. It's a relatively innocuous thing, and now all of a sudden it's like, again, everybody's butt hurt. Oh, I'm being bullied. Okay? Well, you know what? Whether you win or lose, if you don't stand up for yourself, you lost. And if you look for somebody else to stand up for you, you've lost even worse. Okay, that's the outcome, and this is what I mean. Everybody's like, oh, what's the outcome? The bully may kick your ass, or the other side of the coin is every bully's a coward and you'll win, and that's not the argument. The argument is, do you see yourself securely as a person worth defending? Because you know what? You're going to grow up and you're going to have a wife. And maybe she's hot and she attracts the attention of less than worthy men. What are you going to do then? Run and hide? Okay.
Yeah, they're stealing life experience from kids. That's my interpretation of it.
Yeah. What happens when you have a family? If you can't defend yourself, or if you don't feel you're worth defending, you're going to defend your family?
Right. Right. I'm not saying that there isn't a touch of a good message in there where, you don't want to openly hurt people for no reason. That's just dopey. But at the same time, there's a lesson in there. There's a lesson when a kid stands in a hallway and won't let you pass. Eventually, you have to do one of two things. Either get around them as innocuously as you can, or you actually confront them and you deal with it that way. Or maybe you get pushed down and you experience something there. So all of that adds to who you are, and I really think they're stealing that from children.
Well, not only are they stealing it from them, but you've touched on the other danger of it, which I touched on earlier with the motorcycles. You push me, I push you back. You push me harder, I push you back harder. Okay? You hit me, I hit you back. These are the puny rules of the kindergarten fight. Okay, as a grown-up, if you put your hands on me, okay, it's a completely different set of rules. Okay, we learned that gradation. Nowadays, they don't learn the gradation. So it's like, I'm butthurt, shoot up a school. You know, there is no push me, push you. It's, again, because it's an artificial, digitally created environment with no consequences. That whole escalation thing is lost, and people go from A to Z.
That's right. Well, guys, not that I want to stop this conversation, because I got to say, I think this was an awesome show. Really, I love what both of you added to it. Cheryl, you as well. We had a great conversation here, but we are getting quite long-winded at this point. We do want to talk about Body Electrician Community Kitchen. We hope you join us there. Go to Facebook and just join the group. We're all there. And talk to us, ask questions. We will do our best to answer. And submit things, submit recipes and all kinds of things, right, Cheryl?
Yep. We need more recipes for the fall.
We need more recipes for the fall. And tonight's show was awesome, guys. So I think emotionally I'm feeling good. So I hope that the audience is too.
I leave everyone with my normal disclaimer. I'm a Gnostic, not a Buddhist. Learn the difference, and you won't be shocked by the shit I say.
That's it. Will, any last words?
You may feel some unusual sensations with our conversations.
Absolutely.
Side effects may include furry palms, blindness, night sweats, and sticky socks.
Possible diarrhea.
Absolutely. And, of course, you could always see Dr. Will for all those experiences. Or any of the hand scan hubs. Hello. On Long Island, San Diego, and we got them all over the country, folks. So look us up. BodyElectrician.com. And Dr. Will, thank you for joining us. Notorious B.O.B. Bob, we loved hearing from you. Cheryl, lovely evening. And we hope everybody will join us again. This is Body Electrician Live saying good night. Good night, everybody.
Good night.